over it by any chance later?
Yeah, NFAs to DFAs. Why don't we spend a few minutes on it right now? So uh, we have some NFA here, and we want to convert it into a DFA. And the way we do it is I like to think about we have clones. The clones are going to run around the NFA, and we're going to at each point after we've read some things, we're going to have a clone on every state. If you've read some string alpha, then there'll be a clone on every state that the clone could get to if you've read alpha, right? So here, when you first start, the clone could stay here, or before reading any characters, the clone could follow this epsilon path, right? So before reading any characters, the NFA could be on state 1 or state 2, right? So that's what we're going to have, is we're going to have the clone sit on, for the DFA, we're going to have a set for every subset of the NFA states. We're going to have a DFA, one DFA state, right? See, these are all subsets of those states. And what is the start state of this DFA going to be? It's going to be saying, well, there could be a gnome on 1 or there could be a gnome on 2, right? People following that so far? And then what do we do next? We read a character A. The A reads. And what does this gnome do? He goes down here. What does this gnome here do? Well, he dies, right? Or actually, this first gnome has a choice. He can come down here, or he can go across here, right? So this gnome here has to clone himself when he gets an A, because he can go this way or this way. But the gnome that's here, he gets an A, he has nowhere to go, so he dies, right? So this is what happens to the gnomes. Did people kind of follow that? And so what does this gnome do? He's on 1 or 2. So where does he go to? He goes to there being a gnome on 1 and 2 to being there's a gnome on 2 and 5, right? And if we do it again, you get a B? This guy here goes over to 3, and the guy on 5 goes to 2. So they do like that. And what does the gnome that's on 2-5 do? The gnome on 2-5 goes over to 2-3. Are people kind of following that?
Where did the pointer with the A go in NFA that you had? There was an arrow pointing with the A to nowhere.
Oh,
yeah.
I just put that in there to show you that there's no A. This state has no A leaving it. So I just said, oh, if he's here and he gets an A, then he dies. Right? So what does this guy do? See, that gnome, what he did? He flew off into outer space. So the gnome that was on 1 goes to 2. The gnome that was 1 could also go to 5. So the 1 goes to 2-5, and the 2 dies. Right?
Jeff,
so here, they're following B, so they go over here to 2-3. And then they get another B. Well, when they get another B, what happens? This guy here dies, but this guy here, he goes to here. So that's why now we only have a gnome on 3. So this guy here goes over to 3. Right? And then if we get an A, what's our next character? I don't know. If we get a B, then we do the 3 again. Oh, that's what we just did, right? And now, if we get an A, what happens when we get an A? Well, there's different things. That guy can go there, or he can go there, or he can go there, right? So if we just have a gnome on 3 and we get an A, then we can go to 1, 4, 5. Right? That kind of makes sense?
Jeff, I have a general question. I understand how the gnome is mimicking the clones, but the part I have a hard time with is, and I don't see how it's a perfect a perfect copy, because the first one has like how would you even have an accept state for the DFA if we're just like grouping the sets?
Oh, good. So let's keep going along here, doing various examples, and oh, here's one. We'll answer your question in a minute because there's a slide on it in a minute, right? So here we have a guy on 3, and if you get a B, what happens? If you only have somebody on 3 and he gets a B, then he dies. So this guy here goes over to the empty set. Why is the empty set? Because there are no gnomes left, right? This is telling you there are no gnomes. And of course, once there are no gnomes, then we have a little self loop here. You get an A or B, you stay in there. It's a dead state because once all your gnomes are dead, then you're dead. All right, so now we're gonna, when does this NFA accept, right? You have a string alpha, when does it accept an alpha? If there exists a string of a path that leads to an accept state, all right? So what we're gonna do here is who's gonna be our accept states? Any state that contains an accept state. All right, so in this case, our only accept state is 1. So any state down here that contains a 1 will be our accept state. Why? Because if I have a gnome in here, that tells me I could have a gnome in the NFA, I could have a gnome on either state 1, 2, or 4. So it tells me that there is a path with my string leading to 1, and there is a path leading to 2, and there is a path leading to 4. Well, if there's one leading to 1, then I need to accept because that's the start state. Did that answer your question?
I mean, I guess so, but I guess like the way like I'm thinking is like, but just because like it could be on 1 doesn't mean that it should accept. Like it could be in 2 or 4.
Well, it tells me if I'm the DFA gnome and I'm on state 1, 2, 4, then it tells me that I could, if I was in the NFA, I do have a path to 1, I do have a path to 2, I do have a path to 4. And what's the definition of an NFA is that it accepts if there is a path to an accept state.
Okay, I see what you're saying.